How's it going, everyone? Dave Brown here with the New Populist. Thank you for joining me. We recently had this shooting in Tennessee. A 28-year-old transgendered individual went into a private Christian school and shot and killed 3 children and 3 adults. Now, thankfully, the police there, they reacted quickly. They went right into the building and put this person down. Unlike in Uvalde, Texas, where they waited outside for an hour and did nothing. So thankfully, these police officers were brave, and they no doubt prevented more killing. Now, all the talk is about this person being transgendered. They left behind a manifesto that the authorities will not release, which is unusual because usually when they have these manifestos, it's all over the news. They pour through them looking for motive. But in this case, they're saying we don't want to release it. And we can speculate that's because it will reflect badly on the transgender community. And the question really is the transgender community at fault here in some way? Now, let me first say that anytime you have one of these shootings, both sides, left and right, wait to get any indication that the person was on the other side. And as soon as they get it, they attack the other side as being responsible for it. And I hate to see that because these individuals are mentally ill and they use something as a vehicle to act out. So sometimes it's a loner, an incel who hates women. Sometimes it's ISIS inspired and it's religious. And in this case, it's transgender. But none of those things in themselves are responsible. It's not the fault of Muslims. It's not the fault of the transgender community. It's not the fault of women that mentally ill sickos go on shooting sprees. So I don't like to blame any groups. Although I will say right now, there is a group of transgender activists storming the Capitol in Tennessee. So it's not really helping them optically if we want to absolve them of any responsibility. Now, anytime we talk about transgenderism, people on the right immediately say that this is a Marxist issue and that transgenderism is another part of a Marxist attack on the United States. You hear this all the time. Anything that the left does in general, the right calls Marxist. Now, is transgender theory Marxist? The short answer is no. If you read actual Marxist intellectuals, they say that this whole issue, transgender theory, is irrational and is contradictory, and that it is not Marxism. Now, on the right, we're not supposed to give Marx any credit. We're supposed to say he was an evil man, and the entire theory is nonsense, and we should just dismiss it out of hand. But if we're being honest, Marxism, even if you don't agree with it, is founded in rationale. It is something that makes sense. If you read Das Kapital and the whole process he looks at as far as the evolution towards socialism, there is a rational basis for his thinking. It didn't turn out the way he thought it would, but it's not crazy. It's not, again, completely irrational. Whereas gender theory, as Marxists themselves point out, is contradictory, is irrational, and the two are separate. Now, does that mean that the two groups don't get along? Of course they get along. They are fellow travelers. They have a similar enemy, which is the patriarchal system. So for that reason, the two groups do align with one another and they move together. Now, what does Marx say about social issues, about gender? Well, they do talk about it, but they don't talk about the transgender stuff. They talk about male-female relations, right? If you read a book by Frederick Engels, I can't remember the name, but it's basically about the origin of the family And he points out that in previous societies, well into the past, women were actually the leaders and not men. And due to private property, division of labor, capitalism, a lot of issues generally, this process or this system inverted, and men became the leaders, and they started to suppress women. So Marx does talk about issues of gender, but again, they don't talk about this whole transgender theory. And another irony here is that we like to slur other countries as being communist. China, for example, we refer to the Chinese Communist government. We refer to the Soviet Union as being communist, the North Koreans. And the funny thing is that they don't have the issues regarding or surrounding transgenderism to the level that we have in the United States. It is much, much more muted. So if transgenderism was Marxism, why is it here in the United States and not really a big issue over there? And again, it's because they're not the same thing. The one exception might be Cuba. They are much more forgiving about this transgender issue. But besides that one country, you do not see it in these communist countries, these evil communist countries. So what is gender ideology? It is essentially nonsense. Short and sweet, it is nonsense. It is irrational. It makes no sense. It's sort of an offshoot of post-modernism in the sense that there's no objective truth. There's no rational thinking for it. You can just make anything up that you want to make up, and someone can't challenge it and say it's wrong. Everything has credibility, even if the ideas are completely bonkers. And some of it is also rooted in psychology. If there was one group of people that I would say in the scientific field that are quite suspect, I would say it is psychologists. A lot of stuff that comes from psychology is so insane. And the irony is that they're supposed to understand the thought process and thinking and behavior. Yet of all the scientists, they are probably the biggest wackos you'll ever find. And a couple of decades ago, we started to see this shift in psychology where they started to change the how we viewed certain issues like homosexuality and now transgenderism. So this change has happened for a while. And if you believe it, that these things shouldn't be classified as mental illnesses, specifically transgenderism, that's fine. I'm not trying to talk you off of it. But it really isn't based in any sort of rational thought. It's infused with politics. It's infused with personal beliefs, not really in structured science. And one thing about the human mind that's fascinating, and this is the issue with teaching or exposing children to things that are sexual in nature at a young age, is that the human brain is very plastic. We can plant ideas in people's minds. We can groom people, they hate that word, the left, groom people into certain ways of thinking. And so when we expose people to wacky ideologies at a very young age, they sink in and they proliferate. And after a couple of generations, these ideas that are really crazy become mainstream. And that will be very destructive for our society if we allow that to continue to happen. And again, that's why I talk about it. And for us on the right, I know we want to call it Marxism. We love saying it's Marxism. I think we're actually doing damage to our argument if we simplify it and just call it that. We need to be more precise. Transgender theory is not Marxism. It's much worse. It's just completely batshit crazy and insane. Hate to put it that way, but that's the way it is. And that's what we need to identify it as and not give any credibility to it at all. We need to just call for what it is and move on. Well, that's it for now. If you are new to my channel, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.